is kind of spotty, and I might fall off if I turn it on. So sorry about that. But I just want to welcome everybody to our third round of ʻāina meeting. Actually, it's not really. It's an open house, and this is our question and answer session for our third round of ʻāina meetings, where we're going to talk a little bit about how we are proposing to prioritize and phase the potential project improvements that we've recommended and developed through a lot of data collection and community outreach. So hopefully we want to hear what you guys think about how we're proposing to lay out some of these projects. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight, and I hope we have a good meeting. Thanks, Jared.
Okay. I do want to remind everyone on the call that we are recording this presentation, video and voice, and we're going to post it to the website later on. So just throwing that out there. We can go to the next slide, which is the meeting ground rules. And so we want to just remind everyone, thank you for putting your names in when you signed up for this. I can see everyone's names there. Please keep yourself muted throughout the presentation until you're called on to ask a question. Don't share your screen. We're sharing our screen. If you share your screen, it'll take over ours, and then we'll have to get it back. We just want to remind everyone to be respectful of others. Try to limit the sidebar conversations in the chat, because we're going to be using that to ask questions and record the order that questions come in. And just as a warning, any disruptive participants we can actually kick out of the meeting. But I don't think that'll be a problem here. And just to make sure everybody's comfortable with the MS Teams platform that we're using here, if you have any problems, go ahead and throw it in the meeting chat. And we have Vera on the line from our IT office that can help hopefully troubleshoot some of those issues. If you have any issues seeing the chat or connecting or hearing, anything like that, just throw that in there. Okay, next slide. Thanks. Just want to go over the meeting purpose. So this is part of our public outreach for the project. This meeting in particular is a Q&A session that focuses on the Wai'anae Mākaha part of the corridor, but we're open to talking about everything. And we want to get your input on the draft priorities and phasing for the improvements that is posted on the project's virtual open house. And somebody will post a link to the open house in the chat. So I would encourage everyone, if you hadn't had a chance yet, to go check out the open house materials, to go check it out now, have it open during this presentation. And hopefully you had a chance to look at it before this presentation, but go ahead and open it if you didn't. And there's the link in the chat. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so for the agenda, this is going through the introductions next. We did cover the ground rules, and then we're going to go right into the Q&A. So we're going to be letting everyone ask questions, and I'll cover how we're going to be able to call on you and how you can ask a question later, just before the Q&A part. Then Melissa from our office is going to do a debrief of what we heard, and then we'll discuss what the next steps are for how to get your input to us and how you can stay informed on the project. Okay, I do want to recognize the people from the team that are on the call. So this is a collection of all the professionals from DOT and SSFM and actually Oceanit that are here to answer questions for you. So we do have on the line, I believe, George Absidy, the acting administrator for highways. And let's see, who else is here? Is Ken on? I don't see Ken. Patrick Tom, who spoke earlier, is the project manager for DOT. Jill Tanabe is a planning engineer. Is Pua on? Pua IU is also on from the Highway Planning branch, and Shelly Kunishige, Public Affairs from DOT. From our side, it's myself, Jared Chang, Sue LeBron, our lead traffic engineer and team project manager, Melissa May, planner, Matt Fernandez, a planner. We also have Megan Julian, who's a planner with us. And we also have two guys from Oceanit who are helping us with the youth engagement part of this project. That's Mark Kimura and Ian Kitajima also. So a lot of guys here to answer questions if you have any. Okay, next slide. So we're gonna ask that everybody here introduce yourself in the meeting chat. Let us know where you live and also, what brought you to the meeting, what your interests are. That helps us understand who's in the meeting with us. So you can do that at any time, and I'll be looking out for those in the chat. Okay, next, project overview. Oh, so just a quick one. This is a Department of Transportation Highways Division project, and it's a long-term study to determine the vision and management for Farrington Highway Corridor, Route 93. In this project, we're actually looking at two types of improvements. So we're identifying short improvements, that's anything that can be implemented from 6 months to 2 years, and long-term improvements that might take longer than 2 years and maybe possibly up to 20 years. So within that horizon. And the focus here is on multimodal solutions that look at improving safety, congestion, and resilience for the corridor. And next slide. This next slide is just a flow chart of our planning process. The arrows with the blue outline are where we had opportunities for community input. We're pretty far along now. We're in the third round of our ʻāina meetings. And, because of COVID, we've had to adjust to become totally virtual with these meetings. So what we've done is we have a PowerPoint that we recorded that's posted as a video onto the open house website. And we have all of the meeting materials that we would have presented to you in person available on the open house for your review and comment. And so right now, like it says in round 3, we're looking at the solutions, priorities, and phasing. And so we're looking for input on that to take back into our planning work here and incorporate into the final study, essentially. Yeah, and this is just a list of our community engagement activities that we've completed so far. We've had a pretty extensive engagement process. We've reached out to agency and elected officials. The neighborhood boards, we've been meeting with them when we could, when they were having meetings. We've had individual stakeholder meetings, a walk drive audit out in the field. We've engaged some youth in the area through this process. Also, we've had our first 2 rounds of ʻāina meetings, and we've also had an online survey and interactive map where we're able to collect input from anyone on the corridor using GIS online, essentially. And right now we're in ʻāina meetings round 3. So this is the last round of ʻāina meetings for this project. So at this point, I'm going to actually let Ian and or Mark take over and give you an update on the work we've been doing with the youth in the area as part of the Aloha AI program from Oceanit.
Aloha, Mākaha. Aloha, everyone. My name is Ian Kitajima, and I have I think Mark Kimura, my partner, is on the line. Sorry, I'm actually driving right now, but so I just want to thank SSFM and DOT for including us as part of the project. Our work at Oceanit and Mark's work in particular is around creating kind of the next generation of artificial intelligence. And so as Mark and I were over the couple of 2-3 years have been looking at the current state of AI, we felt like it was really important to figure out how do we bring this very disruptive technology that we're working on at Oceanet, but to students today. And so we started developing a system that we started to roll out in the public schools, and now have incorporated into this DOT project. But when we were putting this together, what was really key was really how do we bring the future of AI to our students today, because they're going to inherit and be part of that world. And if you don't think AI is already with us, if you have a smartphone, it's already built into your phone. If you're doing any kind of face logging, logging into your phone, it's already built into your phone. So lots of AI is already around us, but we don't see it yet. But the key was for us was how do we bring this to students? And so we launched as part of this, and thank you to Auntie Puanani Burgess for also incorporating us into the project, was we put together a student internship program, and everything is virtual. Everything is done online. We kind of kicked off a version of this in early part of April to kind of start, and then formally kind of got it going in the last, say, 5 or 6 weeks. We're working with a group of students and teachers from Hawaii Technology Academy, which is the largest public charter school in the state. And what's really nice is they have a blended model, so students are very comfortable with working at home and online. So we have students represented from almost every island except Wai'anae and Molokai. We're still waiting for students from that area. But we have students from Kauai, Big Island, and Maui, and Oahu. And I want to say about half of the students are from the Wai'anae Nanakuli area. And though, artificial intelligence is this really big word, and it's lots about data, and we're collecting data about traffic counts in terms of how many buses and trucks and motorcycles go by. We really start the students off with empathy. So we don't start with technology, we actually start with people, and we ask the students and have been working with the students to brainstorm questions about, if you had this kind of capability, what questions would you have about it if you were the community? And what do you have and what are your questions around just living in the community, even beyond just traffic? So Deputy Director Sniffen really was really great to join us on a call and really ask the students to think more broadly about not just traffic, but really about if we had less traffic or whatever it is, what would that buy us? And the work with the students has really been around asking better questions. And just yesterday, we compiled all of the questions the students had brainstormed, had filtered through, and we took their top questions and actually sent it on to the DOT for their review. And is
Ian, I don't know if you can hear me, but I think we lost you.
I was kind of the data analyst.
Ian,
sorry.
We lost you
Yeah.
for just a few seconds there. So I think you had ended up saying you sent off the questions to DOT from the students, and then you cut off.
Yeah. So we sent about 12 questions that the students had generated. Actually, this was over 3 sessions. So we spent 3 1.5-hour sessions brainstorming questions, because most people think about AI and all the data stuff and they start with that first. We really started the students off with the question and the empathy work to think about it from the community standpoint. And so the students generated probably about 100 questions, from which they worked down to filter out the top questions to about 12 questions that we sent over to the DOT yesterday. And then what we're hoping to see in the next week is those questions come back. And those are the questions that the students will focus on in terms of answering those questions. Now, we're collecting data, we're analyzing the data, but it's really the students that will be part of also looking at this data and the counts and when those counts occur, during what time of the week and time of the day, and try and answer some of these questions, some of which we probably don't have the data to at this point to answer those questions, but we really wanted to show the students that a lot of this work they can do, even though most of them are still in high school. A few of them are just graduated from high school, but how the students in many ways are creating the career of the future. The things the students are doing, those and the way they're doing it, those careers don't really exist yet. So by being a part of this DOT project, these students and the DOT is actually helping to foster and create kind of the next generation of careers here in Hawaii that are really kind of riding the future of one of the big mega trends is artificial intelligence. And what's really important is we become educated, we learn how to use it, we learn how to best use it for our communities. Otherwise, what will happen is we will be surprised and shocked by it. And unfortunately, we don't want that to happen to our community and to our students. So we really appreciate everyone's support in allowing us to be a part of this project. We've also done some community outreach gatherings at Hale Na'au Pono in Wai'anae. So we've done a community AI kind of introductory briefing there, and actually we're planning on a second one at the end of this month. And so we've also been to the community, in the community, and actually had younger people, but also kupuna there as well, and people online. So we've been really fortunate and appreciative of the welcome that we've received to share the work that the students are doing, and also what the future is coming to as we kind of roll into the 21st century. So what you see on the screen there is actually a live sensor. So beyond the existing project, we've actually was very fortunate to put up a sensor that is classifying vehicles as they go by along Farrington Highway. So on that, it's hard to see, but it's classifying cars and trucks and buses and motorcycles and even people. Now, the thing about it is we're not doing any kind of facial recognition. We're not storing any of this kind of data. Our deliverables to the DOT and SSFM is basically counts, but we can actually classify those counts as well. So this is also a cutting edge project, I believe. Maybe one of the first times artificial intelligence is being used by the DOT in a project this way. And when you incorporate the students, it's even to like hopefully another degree of kind of a breakthrough. And what I remind people is this is happening in Wai'anae, Nanakuli. This is not happening in Hawaii Kai. So the most cutting edge kind of work and our students is actually happening in our Wai'anae, Nanakuli community. So again, we're very proud and very honored to work with everyone to be a part of this project. So mahalo again, and I'll turn it back to you guys.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I appreciate the update for everybody. At this point, I'm going to go over the ground rules just real quickly in case anybody joined us after we started. So just want to remind everyone to stay muted until you're called upon, and be respectful of others. Don't share your screen, and limit the use of the chat try to limit the sidebar conversations in the chat. And that's it. Okay, so next slide, I'll show you guys how to ask questions, what we're going to be doing for questions. Okay, so to ask questions, I'm going to ask that you either type the word question in the meeting chat and wait to be called upon. And if you want to ask a question verbally, I'll call on you. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. Or you can just go ahead and type your question right into the chat. And when we get down to it, I'll read it out loud. And then somebody from our team will hopefully answer. So those are the two ways you can get in line to ask a question. Okay. I hope there's no questions. If you have any problems, like I said, we still have Vera on from our office. So go ahead and type your issue into the chat, and hopefully Vera will be able to tackle that and troubleshoot that as we go. But we want to make sure everybody's comfortable with the asking questions. And I think we just had the Deputy Director Ed Sniffen join us. So I'd like to give Ed a chance to address everybody if he's available.
Thanks, Jared.
Hey,
just wanted to thank everybody for being involved in this. This is a huge project for many, many reasons, to make sure that we get your feedback on how we can improve things in your communities for your communities. And so we could highlight the improvements that we're doing, or how we're working with your kids in the schools to make sure that we bring everybody along together. So thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ed. So we're ready to launch into questions. So at this point, let's see. We're going to open up for questions. Does anybody out there have any questions? Let me see. Okay, we got our first question from Pete. His question: not to distract from the advantage of including the existing students. Oh, the initial presentation was placing a lot of emphasis on local community engagement. Using students from these communities, it appears as though you compromised due to COVID-19, but I feel this detracts from resident/community youth engagement from diverse schools and backgrounds to further potential professional development. The degree of involvement has also diminished considerably based on preliminary scope. Okay, long one. Sorry, that was Pete's question. Let's see. Would somebody like to?
Hey, this is Ed. So Pete,
Yep.
thanks very much for the question. From my perspective, we didn't adjust. I mean, we just adjusted to the situation. We wanted to work with the Nanakuli and Wai'anae schools to make sure that we could move forward with the students in the community. We couldn't do it. We had to adjust. So we went to the next best thing, which is HTA, that has several of their students who live in the Wai'anae and Nanakuli communities. They also live in underserved communities in other areas of the state. We thought it was a good tie-in to the technologies that we're trying to push in this case, and definitely doesn't close the door to us engaging future students in the Nanakuli Wai'anae areas. Definitely, this is not going to be a project that we finish up overnight, and the projects that we generate out of this project won't be done overnight. There's definite possibilities for us to include other students into this study as we go forward.
Okay,
can
thanks,
I just
Ed.
add? Oh, can I just add a little bit too? Yeah. So just to let everyone know too, the work that we're doing with these.
Okay. Ian, you're kind of breaking up there. Ian, if you can hear me.
Okay. Can you hear me? I can hear you. Can you hear me okay now?
Okay, now you're coming through, but most of what you said was kind of broken up. So you said, the work we're doing with the students, and then you broke up. So
Okay,
let's just start over. Go ahead.
No. So the work we're doing with the current students is creating a kind of a template for us to be able to bring it to as many students as possible. In a way, COVID was so disruptive. This virus thing was so disruptive, but it pushed, I think, many of us to figure out how do we do this in a digital way. And so all of a sudden, by designing in a digital format, what we realized is, wow, this would allow us to reach every student if we wanted to, in every community, because now we're designing it for a digital kind of environment. Now, of course, now we're realizing there's a big digital gap, right? And so this is the challenge. I think that's the bigger challenge. But everything we're doing with these current cohort of students, we plan to replicate that, and hopefully can come back to the schools in Wai'anae, Nanakuli, and others to replicate and do this and continue to do it. So realize that this is not just that this is not the end. This is really the beginning, I believe, of a way we can incorporate more of our students into this kind of future. So mahalo. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Are there any other questions out there that you have? Okay, John Rogers has a question. What are the next steps with this study? And let's see, I guess I'd like to have Sue answer that question from our team.
Hi there, this is Sue LeBrun. I'm from SSFM, and I'm the lead traffic engineer on this project. I'll turn my camera on so you can see who I am. Hi. So the next step with this study, we're going to take the input we received tonight and through the end of the open house, which was, I believe, the 27th of July. So we're going to take all that input on what we've proposed for our phasing and prioritization, and we might do some adjustments, and then we'll be finalizing the operations report and the corridor study report and sending all that information to DOT for their review. So then they'll have our recommendations. They'll be adjusted for the community input we received, and then they'll have some decisions to make.
And I would just add, John, that the immediate next steps, we're asking for community input on the priorities and phasing. So we'd like everyone to go and visit the open house. There's a poll there you can take, and you can also review each of the sheets for the different areas in this corridor and leave your comments directly in the open house. Okay, next question. Pete, you're up again, and I think you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hey, good afternoon, guys.
Hi.
Sorry for the long-winded question earlier in the writing.
No problem.
Hey, also, thanks a lot to the various respondents on this call that answered questions to me in email. Ms. LeBron, I have not gotten a chance to respond to yet on the last two that you sent. I'm still slowly processing these things along with my personal schedule. The main thing that occurred to me here, and also regarding the youth engagement on this project, that was a really big. That was something that really won over, I think, a lot of the hearts and minds of the community that were at the meeting at the neighborhood board when the presentation was conducted there, and that's something that I think everybody unanimously felt was fantastic, and I am glad for the fact that we still have the opportunity to engage the youth. I nevertheless am disappointed that it's not to the extent or the scope that we had initially imagined, whether it was real or imagined, the initial scope that was defined. So I do appreciate the fact that you're engaging the youth. Even if it's on a somewhat more, I think, marginalized engagement in the traffic count with using the artificial intelligence. I think my main subsequent questions all relate to really the balance of projects that we're seeing. Whether from sort of traffic flow control, for example, as opposed to resilience improvements. I don't see on the scope of all the sheets for the three areas that I reviewed. The resilience improvements are very few. Most of them are slated for very long term, which is understandable because they're usually a higher dollar value, and they more than likely also involve multiple agencies and permitting and other constraints. But they just don't feel very holistic or encompassing as far as that goes. I would anticipate far bigger steps taken to ensure resilience to climate change along the entire leeward coast. In all honesty, just for the Mākaha slide deck, there was basically the drainage issue in Wai'anae, and then we had the retention wall that they were looking at putting up by Lahi. And the drainage issue is a current issue. That's not even looking at future fallout or effects or consequences of climate change. That is just a current issue that needs to be addressed. And so is the overwash onto the road at Lahi. And in addition to that, building a wall, of course, water just flows around walls. It goes under walls. The more lasting action to take would be significantly different, to my mind. So I feel that there's not really the balance hasn't been struck. I feel that there is enormous emphasis on traffic lights, flow control, using infrastructure that's effectively already there. And then there is street widening and additional facilities for bicycling and for pedestrian traffic. But the main emphasis is on those elements, and resilience to climate change is lacking on all three slides. For holistic resilience, something that will really defend the coastline in years to come, not the next 5 years or not even 10 years, but in 50 years. So that's something that concerns me when I look at that. As a resident here, I have family, and obviously I aim to reside here until I'm ancient. But we'll have to see what the future brings. The only other thing that I did find, and it's regrettable that I keep using the word disappointing, but this is an additional factor. The disappointment set in when I reviewed overall the scope and the feedback, and we have all these projects all the way up Farrington Highway, and my hope was that we would be able to bring these all under one umbrella. But I'm finding out progressively that a lot of these projects are already out for bid or whatever the case may be, and so subsequently they're just being excluded. And so we are maintaining the status quo, which is we're going to have a list of disparate projects all the way up and down Farrington Highway, and there's really no continuity between them. There's no umbrella, no oversight to project completion. And that's disconcerting, because I think that's been probably one of the biggest endemic issues on the entire Farrington corridor, is that piecemeal these projects pop up, they start getting accomplished, or they don't get accomplished because nobody wants to bid on the project, whatever the case may be, and then it kind of gets sidebarred, and then the next project will start. So these projects will have an effect on each other, but the main thing is we got to see them through to completion. If we start a project, there's usually justification for that project to be done in the first place. So I would have anticipated the corridor study to encapsulate all existing projects that are happening on Farrington Highway, and to depict those and to represent those within the confines of that, and to provide that umbrella overview. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Any comments from anybody on the team?
Sure, I can address some of that. There are some studies that are being done in parallel with this, and to your point about it all being under the same umbrella, they're not necessarily, but each study has a certain focus, and it's hard to focus on an issue and also do the whole broad picture too. So DOT has studies in parallel that are looking more in depth at the resilience issues and shoreline protection and those kinds of things. So we didn't want to overlap with that or conflict with what they were doing. So there is a certain separation so that people can focus on the issue that they have and do a more in-depth study.
Okay, thanks, Sue. And thanks, Pete, for those comments. We're taking them down, and we'll be under serious consideration as we look at the next parts of this project. Did anyone have any other comments out there or questions? Oh, and looks like Shelly posted a link in the chat to the Coastal Highway Program report from 2019 that was statewide for DOT. So thanks, Shelly, for that reference. Any other questions? We have until 6:30 to have this call open. And the backup, if there are no questions, we were going to ask Sue to just kind of walk us through what's on the open house slides, the 3 slides that show the improvements. So if there's no questions at this time, I'm going to ask Sue to maybe jump in and start walking through some of the improvements that are in and the phasing.
Sorry, Jared, before you do that,
Yep.
If there's no other questions, then I'll jump off. But first, before I do, on a couple of notes. Pete, good thoughts. I disagree with you on what's endemic on the issues on the Leeward Coast. I'll tell you that the issues that are endemic there is that nothing got done. And nothing got done because we looked at these big solutions that we'd push off into the future without looking at what the needs are now. What this plan is doing is making sure we balance out delivering now what we can immediately while we're planning out what's in the midterm and what's in the long term. That long-term view on climate change is coming up with our resiliency report statewide. I'm not just going to look at the Leeward Coast to do it. I'm looking at statewide to ensure that we do things properly for the whole state, especially because this is big dollar value stuff. But I'm not going to have to wait for that to come up before I do the improvements that are necessary. We heard there's no sidewalks. I'm not going to wait for this climate change report to come in for us to put sidewalks in. We heard there's no lighting. I'm not going to wait for that either. All of these improvements that we can do, we're going to start them off to do them now. And not only are we going to have the students involved with the AI piece, they're going to be involved in the planning and the studies and the designs for those improvements as well. So the intent is for those students, when they graduate, they can point back and say, this is what I did for my community. So I heard disappointment a lot, but it's almost like you think the report is done. This project is done. This is just the first step of many that is going to come through to tie everything together.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Thanks for that. Okay, if everybody is okay with Sue, kind of quickly walking through the improvements, it might generate some questions on your side. That's the hope. So go ahead, Sue. I'm gonna turn it over to you now.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jared. Can everybody see my screen okay? It has a map.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have three PDFs here. This first one is of the Mākaha Wai'anae area. So it just kind of maps out the improvements that we're proposing, and I'll just give a brief overview. You'll see these little symbols here mean that those are crosswalks, and we're proposing to put lighting at each end of the crosswalk all along this area. Pedestrian safety is a priority on this, and one of the best things we can do is to keep these crosswalks nice and lit, both at the signalized and unsignalized crosswalks. There's some intersection improvements at Army Street and Puhano, and there's a computerized traffic control system to improve the traffic flow through this area. We had some community requests for speed feedback signs. So both here and there, coming into the 25 mile per hour zone, we're recommending speed feedback signs to just remind people what their speed is, and so they can control it. Two of the resiliency improvements are a drainage study at Wai'anae Valley Road and Lihoku, and also a berm or a wall at Mākaha Valley Road to prevent that sand overwash. It may not be the longest term solution, as Peter suggested, but something is needed right away because there is so much sand just coming on there daily, and it's an issue that came up with a lot of comments from the community. Okay, on the next page, it shows the cost for some of these improvements, and I've divided them into safety, congestion, and resilience costs. The green one here under congestion, this project is already underway. It's a City and County of Honolulu project, and that's getting the signals coordinated and optimized and synchronized so that they can just have traffic flow through there with fewer delays. And then on the last page here, it just prioritizes them into two different phases. The short term is 6 months to 2 years, and that usually entails something that is within the right of way or low cost, already in the budget, something that won't need environmental permitting, So that can get done more quickly because we're staying within the right of way. So that would involve all of these, which are low cost countermeasures that are for safety, and then the lighting for the crosswalks and the computerized traffic control system. Then for the intermediate term, 2 to 5 years, it either goes outside the right of way or it's a higher cost and will take a little longer to budget. So that's Mākaha Wai'anae. We can come, if anybody has questions, you can just stop me, but I'll just kind of keep going to Maili and then Nanakuli, and then we can come back for questions, or I'll just stop and
Sue, I'll let you know when there's
Okay.
a question. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so the second area is the Maili area. And again, we have the crosswalk lighting all the way along here. You'll see each one of these symbols indicates a crosswalk that should have some better lighting. And then there's this area with the blue dots right here. And we're recommending to add sidewalks, and there's already shoulders, but we're going to suggest that they become more painted and signed to be shoulder bike lanes. There's some intersection improvements at 4 different intersections. There's this little area right here is a center left turn lane, so that people coming this way and turning left into those businesses can pull out of the through lane and people can get around them.
Sue, I think you stopped sharing your screen. Oh, no, sorry, my bad. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, I still saw the frame, so I'm glad I didn't have to figure that out. And then of course, these green areas right here are shared use path segments. So to get bikes all the way along this coast, we need to get these shared use paths built. And I think the best way to do that is one segment at a time and just eventually work to get them all connected so that we have that connectivity from north to south. So this is a typical section of what it looks like now between Kaukama and Maili'ili. And then this is the section and what it would look like in that area where we're suggesting the 2-way left turn lane. So it would actually be 5 lanes wide. There'd be these shoulders, curb and gutter, and then sidewalk on this side and sidewalk on this side. So these are the costs divided into safety and congestion. And then here we have them divided into phasing. And again, we have the short term, 6 months to 2 years, and the intermediate term, 2 to 5 years. So these are pretty much all within the right of way. And they're low to medium cost, or they're already budgeted and they're getting worked on now. And then these ones are either outside the right of way or they're a higher cost and would need a little more budgeting, so more time to get to them. So the intermediate term, the sidewalk and shoulder bike lanes would be about a $14 million project. The shared use paths, segment from Maili'ili to Lihoku would be about $1 million, and then from Kaukama to Hakimo would be more like 2.2 million. This is a computerized traffic control system within Maili. And this was actually not one that was already budgeted, but we're recommending just to keep continuity of the signal flow that we add that in. And then the short term, these are mainly low cost safety countermeasures, and then adding the left turn lane and the adding the lighting at the crosswalks.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move on to Nanakuli. All right, in Nanakuli, this is the main feature here is where these blue dots go along here from Hallelujah to Hakimo. And that's where the 5th lane extension is proposed. And the typical section would also include sidewalks and shoulder bike lanes. There's intersection improvements for safety recommended at 4, 5, 6 different intersections. And then we also have sidewalk right here so that we can get a raised sidewalk through there. This black area is where it's already 5th lane and the shared use path along this side. And then again, here's 2 more of those segments of the shared use path. This one that would go along with the 5th lane, and one that would connect up from Nanakuli into this area down in Ko'olina. I think that's, there's some drainage improvements needed at Princess Kahanu Drive. And then there was a right turn lane at Haleakala that would allow just a little bit better level of service here, just so those people don't have to wait for the people going left. They can just have their own lane. So there's also a computerized traffic control system. The signals along here would be synchronized and optimized so that traffic can flow better. And we're recommending to add these 2 signals out here near La Aloha. So the cost, the typical section through that area right now from Hallelujah to Hakimo looks like this. And the recommended section would be the 5th lane, so it's contraflowed, and then shoulder lanes, or I should just say shoulders. That's also a very nice safety measure, because if someone's car breaks down and there's no shoulder, it's really a hazard, as we found out. So it's nice to have shoulders so people can pull out of the through lanes and be more safe if their car, something happens. So then there would be this raised sidewalk with curb and gutter over here. And then this is the shared use path would be a 10-foot wide facility. These are the costs for all these improvements, divided into safety, congestion, and resilience categories. And then as far as phasing, this actually has 3 phases, because these 3 would be in the 6 months to 2 year range. These would be in the 2 to 5 year range. And then this one would be more like the 5 to 10 year range, just because of the cost. And this is the shared use path segment from Pohakanui to Ko'olina. It's close to 2 miles. So it's costly. And there's, I think, 7 little bridges that would need to be addressed. And I think it would be a good project to partner with other agencies. Intermediate term would be the shared use path from Nanakuli to Pohakanui. It's a little shorter segment, and it's right where we're doing some other work. So hopefully that could happen a little bit sooner. And then upgrade and widening the sidewalk from Pohakanui to Hallelujah. That's that gets to be rather expensive, because it's a longer area, and it is possible that the widening would go outside the right of way, so it might take a little bit longer. The 5th lane is already in the works, because it's planned to be funded by the rental car surcharge. It's about a $32 million project, but that's where the funding would come from. Here too, we're adding lighting at the crosswalks at almost $500,000. And then the rest of these are mainly just low cost safety countermeasures that are proven to have a high benefit to cost ratio, just like in the last 3 PDFs that I showed. They're just known to have great benefits and be very inexpensive to install. So good safety measures. So that's all I have for these, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions. If you want to just tell me which community it is, I'll go to that slide. Jared, are you there?
Jared may have jumped off because he told me his battery was dying. He was going to grab it. So I'm going to take over for Jared briefly, but I see that this is Melissa May, everybody. Hello. I'll turn on my video. I see we got one comment from Pete. Thank you. Your support of shared use paths to remove pedestrian and bicycle traffic from the main road, and having more of those along the corridor. So thank you for that. Noted that. Any other thoughts or questions that came up from Sue's presentation? Okay, John Rogers, okay. Jared, I see you're back on. I'll let you take back over. We have a question from John Rogers.
Okay, the shared use path from Pohaku Nui to Ko'olina was originally part of the Leeward Bikeway, and I thought mostly federally funded. Is that a possible partner? Are you referring to possible partner in the federal funding side of it, or the
Yes, I just thought because it was originally part of Leeward Bikeway. It's been something that's planned for since basically the 1980s, and so I thought the Leeward Bikeway was all going to be federally funded originally, because you're doing part of the Leeward Bikeway right now in Waipahu, and so I just because I'm a little discouraged that it's a 5 to 10 year project, and I think, but it's also I understand the timing because it's something that's been around since the 1980s, but I'll say the 1990s. 2000 was one of the first EAs that was done on it. So that's my question: is if it's federally funded, can that make it happen faster?
I'd like to get Pat's thoughts on that, if possible. Pat and Sue, can you stop sharing your screen? Also, we can see your screen still.
Sorry.
Hi, this is Pat. Well, I kind of think this is just my opinion. So I guess having a project funded is one of many hurdles that you have to overcome to get a project done. But I think also in this case, though, this potential shared use path will require a lot of coordination and a lot of different. And there will be a lot of different project development challenges that have to go along with it. The initial Leeward Bikeway that you're talking about that we're constructing right now, that thing took like 15 years. We had the funding 15 years ago, but it still took 15 years to start construction. So I guess the short of it is, yeah, federal having it funded, regardless of whether or not it's federal aid or not, having it funded is one of the major hurdles. But there's so many other things that need to be completed before a project like that can go forward, like a lot of environmental clearance, a whole bunch of coordination with a whole bunch of different agencies. So I guess that's kind of how I feel about it right now. Funding is important, but it's not everything.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Are there any other questions out there? Now is the time. We have about 5 minutes left or so of our scheduled time. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Melissa to go ahead and do the debrief. So we do this so that we report back to you and make sure that we heard you correctly throughout the meeting. Is now a good time, Melissa?
Yep.
Okay, great.
So I just took notes on a few of the comments that came up, and if there are any nuances I didn't get from those of you who made comments, just chime in. But
I'm gonna stop you right there because we got a quick question that came in from Kapua. So if you're okay, I'm gonna read the question.
No problem.
She's asking, why is this called ʻāina meetings when we're talking about traffic? Let's see. When I see ʻāina in the title, I'm thinking we're talking about lo'i, mala, alawai, something we do with our hands in relationship to food, plant sustainability, etc. Not the highways and traffic. Any chance of better identifying these meetings and removing ʻāina from the description, I guess?
I can probably speak to that, at least where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
So early on in the process, we started working with Intipua Burgess, and she brought in a couple of young people from the West Side, Lilimia Irvine and her daughter Pua'ina Burgess, and they were helping us early on in crafting the stakeholder engagement approach. And it was actually their suggestion to call them ʻāina meetings because I think the reason was to tie it to a place-based approach. You know, they wanted it to be understood that, you know, when we're addressing Farrington Highway, we're looking at it in the context of the place, not just as the highway itself. And so originally we were thinking about calling it Moku meetings or something like that, but they thought ʻāina was more appropriate. So that's what we've been calling it. This is the last round now, so I've heard it from a couple people actually, and we would definitely consider renaming it in the future, but at this point we're almost done with the process.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for that question, Kapua. Okay, let's go with the debrief.
Okay, is my screen showing up?
Yes.
Okay. So we heard definitely interest and concern for deepening the youth involvement from the West Side. We share that feeling. We had planned this big program with UH West Oahu and had to ramp back, but like Ed said, it's not over yet, so we're hopeful. Question about next steps for the project, pretty straightforward. The balance of projects oriented towards congestion and traffic control versus resilience. That point is well taken, that, you know, resilience needs to be addressed. There are efforts underway to do so. And it was also noted that the drainage improvements that are being presented are addressing problems that exist today, but they should be factoring in future flooding issues as well. A good point about needing to make sure that the comprehensive corridor study factors in what's already happening and brings together an umbrella program so that it's a cohesive set of improvements. And I think that was the overall intent of the study. And so I think once we kind of settle on our current program, we can pull it all together under that umbrella. And then support for shared use paths that separate pedestrian and bike from vehicle traffic with the potential to tie it into the larger Leeway Bikeway project effort. And just concern about the overall timeline for that. So if there's anything that anyone wants to add or clarify, this will all be part of the record anyway, because we have all your comments on the recording, and we'll prepare a summary and we'll make the video available on the project website.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Can we go right to the upcoming activity slide?
Sure.
So this, our open house will be open till the 27th of July, so all comments are welcome. Here is in the middle there, the website address where you can get to the open house. And just to remind everyone, we are having another Q&A session on July 24th at 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. So different time with a focus on the Nanakuli Ma'ili area. And if you have any questions, the contacts are on the website, or in the next slide, you can contact Melissa May. And her contact is on the next slide. So if you have any other questions, you want to email. But since we're basically out of time for our scheduled time, I'm going to ask if if Ed is still on, if he has any last words for everybody, or if Pat wants to say something to close out the meeting.
I see Ed's thingy is still there. but if he's not there, then I don't know if George wants to say anything, but no. If not,
We also
sorry.
join the meeting.
I'm sorry.
I'll say a little something. I mean,
All right.
Right on.
George Absetti, the Highways Administrator TA. I just want to thank you folks for coming tonight. We know how valuable your time is, and we really appreciate that you shared it with us and gave us your input. It's it's really hard to show your appreciation online, but we want to thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it again. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Well said, George. Thank you. And I also want to thank everybody for joining us. Everybody be safe out there and have a good night.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Aloha.
Thanks, everybody.
Mahalo. Thank you.